Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Philly Film Brothers. I am Chris Pierdomenico, here along with my brother,
Dave Pierdomenico.
and today we're going to be talking about the newest DC Comics film, Joker. What's kind of interesting is that about this time 3 years ago, we did a review of Suicide Squad, even before Dork Daily was a thing. So,
Yes, it's amazing the foresight we had to do something like this.
really,
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So here's a very, very short clip that just kind of take you back in time a bit.
You don't understand. All I have are negative thoughts.
Wow, that was like a million years ago.
It's amazing that we haven't aged a day.
We met today and we wore the same exact clothes that day as well.
That's consistency for you.
Yeah.
So, Joker, in other words, the family-friendly comedy of the fall. I don't know why I thought this, but when I saw there was a movie about Joker and its comic books, I assumed it was a family movie, and I brought the whole family, the kids, the grandparents, everyone. Did not go over well.
Okay. Well, on that note, I to say to that. My initial reaction was, and I do want to, as always, there will be spoilers in this podcast. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you're planning to see the movie,
Go see the movie first.
Basic premise: it is another take on the classic Joker character. They had said it was pretty publicly shared that this was not connected to any comic book.
I mean, not really.
Not really.
It's set in Gotham. It has all the atmosphere, but its inspiration is really it is its own story. I think if anything, it's more like a Scorsese film. Or at least it's trying to be a Scorsese film.
And the filmmaker Todd Phillips has said he's been influenced by Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, among others. And it's clearly what I was surprised at. I didn't think that like Bruce Wayne was going to be in the film. Wow, Batman actually is in this film.
That was surprising.
I was surprised by that because I thought that to me it sounded like they just had this movie about someone that had a lot of problems and he just becomes someone called Joker. But no, I mean it takes place in the Batman universe. On one hand, because you have the Wayne family and
they play a pretty big part in
it. They play a very big part in it. But at the same time, it feels like the real world. Like it takes place in 1981. It's basically New York in 1981.
Can I just say how surreal but kind of cool it was to hear Robert De Niro say Gotham? Here in Gotham.
Yeah, that was because he's playing it just totally straight. And I was really drawn to this movie, and I've told you this initially because just from the trailer, it's clearly very influenced by The King of Comedy, and if you don't know what that is, essentially...
Worth checking out. It's streaming on Prime for now.
It's sort of a happier version of this. It's a more lighthearted version of this movie, in a way.
It's certainly more of a dark comedy. De Niro's character in that is good-hearted, and it's played for laughs.
De Niro plays the character in that movie that is obsessed with a Johnny Carson or David Letterman type figure,
played by Jerry Lewis.
Jerry Lewis, and he stalks him, and I won't spoil that movie, but it's
worth checking out.
It's really worth checking out, and that was a movie I really loved a lot when I saw it, and I thought it was I just love the casting choice of just having
De Niro
play the opposite role this time.
Now, I'll say I was a bit concerned going in. I know it, and we'll get to it, all the controversy around this movie. My biggest concern going was I was afraid it was almost going to be too much like The King of Comedy or Taxi Driver. I was afraid it was going to be, like a thinly veiled remake. And, to my pleasant surprise, it wasn't. It was very much its own thing. The inspiration is there, but it runs completely on its own.
And there's some loose connections between the characters. I thought that was really great casting, and I think this is one of Phoenix's greatest roles.
You know, I find myself looking to his other ones, trying to find one that I liked more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I can. He was amazing in Walk the Line.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that, you saw a complete devotion to the character. Whereas in Walk the Line, you forgot you were watching Joaquin Phoenix. You felt like it was just, well, that's Johnny Cash. Much like here, you forgot it was him. And, well, that's just Arthur Fleck. That's just Joker.
He also was in Signs, too. I mean, he was Mel Gibson's brother in Signs, and that's... So he really does a great job of escaping into these characters.
He's played psychotic before. Let's not forget Gladiator.
Right.
Emperor Commodus.
But I think Oscar-worthy performance. If this film gets nominated for nothing else,
he needs to.
He needs to be nominated.
He needs to not only... I would love to see him win just so I could say 2 Jokers have won Oscars.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
I know everyone's saying, oh, how does he compare to Heath Ledger? How does he compare to Heath Ledger? I don't think it's even really fair to compare them.
It's apples and oranges.
It really is, because Ledger was the Joker the whole movie.
Right.
And he inhabited that role brilliantly, whereas Phoenix, he's really only Joker for like the last act.
And, I mean, you can almost see his Joker turning into Heath Ledger's Joker eventually. I mean, obviously, timeline wouldn't work out. But I think he turned into a recognizable version of the Joker by the end.
He did.
That was the end goal, was to, that he eventually became that
So
that
I don't
comic
think
book villain.
it's fair to compare them. I'll say this, though, in comparing him, which I just said I wouldn't do, but bear with me. In comparing him to every other, previous version of that character, Phoenix is the only one that you really feel there's a sense of misery to him.
Yeah.
All the other Jokers have fully, gone through the transformation.
Right.
They inhabit the joy, the malice that is Joker. Phoenix here, he's the only one that I felt like, for at least part of it, it wasn't that he really wanted to be Joker. It was that he felt like there was nothing else for him to be. That's what he was, whether he wanted it or not.
I liked what they did with explaining his laugh. I thought that was really a clever idea. And I think maybe even kind of insinuates as other iterations we've seen that maybe he was laughing, maybe it wasn't because he was happy.
Which I've heard is a legitimate
it's a real
condition.
Yeah.
It is. I didn't know.
I don't know the name of it, but I've heard it. It's certainly a real thing.
Yeah, it's brought on, like the movie says, it can be brought on by trauma.
I think what I initially felt about this is one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen. At the same time, it's one of the most excellent put together films I've ever seen. And
it knows exactly what it's going for. To be fair, I'll say this. You're right. It is very well put together. At times, it felt like maybe it was trying to tackle things it didn't quite have the maturity to tackle.
Like what parts?
Well, I like what it did with the concept of the class warfare.
Yeah.
But it never fully realized that. It never... It had a very basic understanding of it.
Yeah. Like it
I
just
felt
kind
like
of...
you could have gone a lot further with that.
I think you could have, but the movie was Joker, and it was focused...
Yes, and...
It was focused on him. And I think in that sense, if they had focused too much on another message, I think it might have become convoluted. And what I like about this film is that I think it condemns society without excusing him.
Yeah,
I think it condemns the society that created him, while at the same time condemning him. I never felt like it excused what he did.
No, I felt rightfully so that what he did was horrifying.
But I think the movie wanted us to feel that way as well. They did not want us to feel sympathetic to what he became.
Yeah, they want us. It's clear. Like, we feel very sympathetic for him in the beginning.
Right.
And we see the struggles he goes through. And it raises, again, very legitimate issues about, mental health in this country.
Yeah.
And how he probably wouldn't have gone down that road if the government-funded program that was, giving him his medication and his therapy hadn't been defunded and shut down.
Yeah.
It's really tragic to see, just how much, treatment costs, how much medication is, how much just going to a counselor costs, that a lot of people who struggle with mental illness simply can't afford to get treated for it, and they suffer. And then society suffers.
You do feel sympathetic for him in the beginning, and then when he makes that first kill, it's almost like you're watching someone that you know or you care about just do horrible things.
And even that first kill on the subway, initially, you almost feel justified in it, because they were assaulting him.
Argue self, but he clearly.
But then he goes too far. You're like, yeah, give it. Oh my god. Oh my.
Well, when he didn't let up, and then it's clear that.
And then he chases the guy.
He chases them down.
So that would actually not to be my legal expertise comes from watching movies and this great YouTube channel called Legal Eagle.
It's funny. I watched Legal. I just got into that Legal.
Oh,
Eagle.
You did? Isn't that great?
I love that guy. That guy is.
If you're watching this. You're awesome. Nothing but kudos.
We're big fans. Yeah. I just got into that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I love that channel.
Yeah.
And he was it was in his video on The Dark Knight where he talked about, lethal force is justified only if the other party is using lethal force against you. That you do have what's called a duty to retreat. Mm-hmm. If you can retreat from a situation without resorting to lethal force, you must do that. So they were. They were assaulting him, but they were not necessarily using lethal force on him. Or after he shot the first one, clearly they backed down out of fear. Continuing to kill all three of them was just straight up murder.
Right. Yeah, he wouldn't have a case. And
I'd love to see his response to this.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll probably do it at some point. I stopped feeling sympathetic for him after that, and I think that was the idea.
And that's the turning
because point. I think the filmmakers they get you to feel for him and get to know him, and then you almost kind of feel like betrayed by this character.
That was the moment I think he became Joker. Before that, it almost felt like the movie was an adaptation of Pagliacci the Clown.
Which I'm not familiar with.
So for those of you unfamiliar with Pagliacci the Clown, it is an old Italian opera about this clown who, I'm sure in the comments, real opera experts are gonna roast me for this. My basic understanding of it comes from an old joke, which I heard in Watchmen that Rorschach tells. Basically, the joke goes, man goes to the doctor, says, "Doctor, I'm sad. I'm always sad." The doctor says, "Oh, well, you know what? I know what'll help. Go into town, there's this clown named Pagliacci. He's hilarious. Go see his show, and it'll cheer you up." And he said, "But doctor, you don't understand. I am Pagliacci."
I think you told me this before.
And it's about, it taps into the sort of underlying tragedy that many comedians and clowns have.
I could see why people were upset by this movie.
On the surface, in some ways.
Because it is conflating those two things. I think storytelling wise, it worked.
It does.
But I could definitely understand some of the reaction for sure.
Could you see someone with a kind of twisted mind seeing it as a call to do something?
No. I didn't, and I did not feel it was that, because he's not. I feel like I'm defending the Joker. I don't want to. I'd be very careful what I say here.
Your Honor, he's not that bad a guy.
Even though there was a lot of realism in this movie, I feel like so much of it was over the top that it did not. I didn't really see like a connection to current events.
And I sort of felt that nature throughout. Well, something I absolutely loved about it was it is so over the top, and it is so, for lack of a better term, random. I loved that when something random or absurd would happen, it never felt unnatural.
Yeah.
Whatever crazy thing that happened felt like, well, that makes sense to this movie.
What scene was most disturbing to you, or what stuck out for you that really?
I mean, obviously, two scenes come to mind. Obviously, when he shoots Robert De Niro,
right?
It's that really tense build up when, he says that iconic line, "What do you get when you cross something with was a mentally ill person with a society that treats him like garbage?"
Right.
You get what you something deserve.
Right. And to go back to Robert De Niro's character, I mean, they go out of their way to make him Gotham City's Johnny Carson. And I'm someone that is I'm very interested in late night history, and from
we've met
Conan, and I've met Seth Meyers. You were there for that.
That's right. We met him too. Yeah,
we met Seth Meyers.
Conan or Seth, if you're watching this, we love you too.
Yes, I'm sure they want to be mentioned in this video. Sure, but
Conan won't mind.
Conan won't mind. Conan and Seth, we've been to Colbert. No, I was at Colbert. You weren't at Colbert.
I missed that day.
Yeah. But they just make it seem, and I was too young for Johnny Carson, but I recognized him as sort of the grandfather of late night television. And even how they designed the curtain, even like the style of humor, they were saying this is Johnny Carson. And like I was just thinking the whole time watching, like, oh my gosh, what if somebody had killed Johnny Carson on TV?
And the
impact that would have had.
And it may have started a riot.
Right, and which
takes me to my other.
Well, before you get to that, I was the whole time I was thinking, because I know when we've gone to those shows, like they check you, like you go through metal detectors and everything. But maybe at the time
it was the '80s.
Yeah,
maybe there was less security. He's also the guest.
Right. True, yeah. Although I imagine they might check guests now, but
I'm sure they do. I know
nowadays
you can't even get into.
But just like there are little things they do, like even his opening credit sequence and the announcer, like they even have the guy that looks like what the heck is it? Ed McMahon. They have the Ed McMahon lookalike, and it just like I kind of felt like that was going to happen, but when it does, and the fact that they linger on it. And they linger.
It is so tense.
And it's just
like even though you kind of know it's coming.
You kind of know it's coming, and I figured this is what it was leading up to in the climax. When it happens, I was like, oh my gosh! Like I still was like,
it sends a chill down.
It disturbed me a lot. And when the camera pulls back and he's talking into the camera, and then we pull back into some kind of control room where you're seeing all these other news reports talk about it. I felt it was very reminiscent of Natural Born Killers.
I have not seen that.
You've not seen that? Okay. Well, those of you that have, it's in...
I schooled you on Pagliacci, you schooled me on Natural Born Killers.
I'm surprised you haven't seen that. That seems like...
I know.
That's like right up your alley.
It's been on my list forever. It's one of those ones that's always escaped me.
But the movie in the simplest explanation possible, it's about how the media creates villains and glorifies violence, and which oddly was an argument against the movie.
I mean, the whole reason he's on the show is because they made fun of him.
Right. But just having the way this film dealt with the media reminded me a little bit of Natural Born Killers, and then also Network a little bit too. Mm-hmm. Especially the ending of Network. They did a really good job of making it look like it took place in 1981, and I think
I love that like kind of dirty, gritty setting.
Yeah,
like right from the get-go, you feel like this is a Gotham that really, really needs Batman.
Right. Yeah.
It needs something.
And in some ways, like this sets up why we need Batman.
Yeah.
In some ways, like this, you can imagine maybe this is where the rogues gallery kind of started. Like this is where the crime kind of started in a lot of ways.
It's interesting how this city can create two characters that are so different out of the same circumstances.
I'd like the scene where Arthur and Bruce meet. Like it was unsettling, but it was just really interesting to know, like, they're going to be arch enemies one day. and I guess it was Alfred,
Mm-hmm.
right? I figured, I mean, British accent, I figured it was Alfred.
No, it's Batman's other British butler.
Yeah, right.
Pugsley, the one you don't hear
Pugsley.
as much about.
Uh,
That was an Addams Family reference.
Yes.
For those of you paying attention.
I thought that scene was really interesting. And I think what really works with this is you're thinking of you're always by the time he develops into this villain, he turns into the villain, you really don't know exactly what's going to happen next, and it just keeps getting darker and darker and darker, and you really don't know what he's going to do. Were you surprised he killed his mom?
Not really, only because at that point Arthur was gone.
Right.
He was Joker, and in learning his own history, his mom was pretty terrible to him. The way she allowed the abuse.
Yeah.
She herself had issues. I'm sure that maybe there was something genetic with.
Well, apparently he was adopted. Supposedly, we'll get into. There are different theories, and
I'm not 100%.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to the ending.
But I feel like. Well, I mean, let me put it this way: when someone has a Norman Bates-like relationship with their mother, are you surprised when they kill them?
This was kind of
Because I really got that vibe.
When
he's bathing her. That was almost creepier than the scene where he kills De Niro.
I didn't think of Psycho. That's a good point. Yeah, it was very Norman Bates-like. I mean, he kind of looks like Norman Bates in a lot of ways. I didn't even connect that. Interesting.
That's why you have a horror fan on these.
But what worked for me, like the movie made me very uncomfortable, and because you didn't know exactly what was going to happen next. And one of the scenes that really had me on the edge of my seat, aside from the ending at the talk show, was when he kills his coworker in his apartment, and his other coworker, you don't know if he's going to let him live or die.
Yeah, you.
And I think what does he? Does he kiss him or something? Or
yeah, he gets, and then he unlocks the door for him.
He unlocks the door for him and lets him go, and that's like the only mercy we've seen from him. But that whole scene and seeing his coworker's reaction, like your heart breaks. And yeah, that scene really disturbed me too. I'd say between that and the late night show scene. So let's talk about the ending. So. You said you feel the movie should have ended at what point? If you were to end this movie, where would it have ended?
It should have ended during the riot when the rioters are sort of almost praising him when he's in the crowd
when he stands up and everything. Okay,
and they're almost worshiping him because that felt like the perfect horrific consequence of all the negativity that had happened the whole movie. Between society doing what it did, between Joker doing what he did, this is the end result. It was brutal. It was awful. And it's what comes naturally.
Now, the thing I liked about that scene, I did like how they connected it to Bruce Wayne's parents.
Joker kind of creates Batman now.
But when you see the movie theater... Actually, when we saw Thomas and Martha Wayne earlier... I thought that was going to be the time that Joker killed them.
The second you're right about the movie theater, the second I saw the theater, I'm like,
oh,
that's it.
But it wasn't. He confronts Thomas Wayne, and that's a very interesting scene, and we'll get into that shortly. But when we see the movie marquee and we see them see them walking out, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. And I did like that this movie was all leading to that. That this is, okay, well, this is what created Batman. And even though we've seen that scene so many times in how many movies?
Countless.
This
one felt...
I felt it was earned.
Given that we went through this, all this through the whole movie, given that we had met Thomas and Bruce earlier, and given that this departed from the normal telling of that backstory... Usually it's a mugging or a robbery. Mm-hmm. Here it was that guy that's the billionaire Thomas Wayne.
Yeah, so it took
you get what you deserve.
It got a different take on it. He was
empowered by Joker.
By Joker, and so Joker indirectly kills Batman's parents. and I like that they stay true. I mean, they even have the pearls that fall, and you feel it like. I thought it was well done, and you didn't linger too much on it. It felt like it kind of brought it full circle. That's for me.
That's why that whole riot scene should have ended the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it to the asylum in the next scene, and then where he kills that therapist, and then he's like running from the guard in an almost like slapstick, Benny Hill fashion.
Yeah.
I just like completely undermined the brilliance that was that.
But that's the Joker, though. I mean, that's the Joker is that.
He is, but the film and us, the audience, are not like we needed it to end with that.
Well, it's been debated whether or not the movie actually happened. Are you aware of this theory?
No, I haven't been on Reddit today.
Okay. Now, I look around at different things I mean, so we know that Joker made up the woman he was interested in, his neighbor.
Yes.
Right? He made up that relationship.
Who we're not sure if she's alive or not.
No, I think it was clear she was alive. I didn't get that sense.
You're not. That's one of my theories.
But he imagines being on Robert De Niro's show in the beginning, and he thinks so. The theory is that when he's at the insane asylum, because we never see him get captured, like he's sitting there explaining it to the doctor, and then he imagines Bruce, and he's just like, "Oh, I thought of something funny, you wouldn't get it." And so the theory is that he made all that up. That was like the crazy story he gave.
I mean, it's a cop out.
I kind of felt that
it's
too.
A huge cop out of that.
The old trope, it was all a dream. That I'm not crazy about that. At the same time, and even the director has said that he wants to leave it open to interpretation. He doesn't want to tell anybody what it is.
Well, when they inevitably do the sequel and have him fight Batman, we'll get our answer.
They said they're not going to do that.
Do you believe that for 1 second?
No, I mean, hey, Spider-Man's back in the MCU, so
exactly. Do you really believe they're not going to continue this Joker?
Got to have money,
and right? Given the way that it already really performed at the box office.
Well, Todd Phillips has been insistent that he does never wants this Joker to meet Batman or Robert Pattinson's Batman,
and Warner Brothers will do it with or without him.
Probably. I mean, I hope so. Since this did so well, I heard that they are looking at doing, I don't know how this is going to go over, they want to do a Mr. Freeze movie now. They want to do a Two-Face movie. Like, they actually are talking about those too. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I think Two-Face is not that different from Joker in some ways. But I think a Mr. Freeze movie would be kind of interesting.
I mean, considering the
only... What killed the dinosaurs?
That's what I mean. That's the only cinematic comparison we have. It'd be tough. We already kind of got, like, the tragic, sympathetic Two-Face story in The Dark Knight with Aaron Eckhart.
But there's also been many different Jokers. But I guess to go back to the ending, part of me kind of likes that you don't know for sure. Because that's so true to the Joker. You never really knew the Joker's backstory. And there was even some, initially when they announced it, I know I was thinking, well, do I really want to know the Joker's backstory?
I mean, it's part of what made Heath Ledger so brilliant is that he's a nobody from nowhere.
Right. But he had all these inconsistent stories. We know that Arthur makes up stuff and he imagines things. I theorize maybe after he wasn't able to get his medication, maybe everything after that was in his head.
I hope not.
It is kind of a cop out.
It's not kind of a cop out. It is a major cop out
because he has blood on his shoes when he at the end, so you assume he killed the therapist or something. So it's not a movie that made me feel good.
But it wasn't meant to.
It wasn't meant to. Like, it was meant to. But I was just very intrigued by it, and I thought it was exceptionally well made.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I mean, they set out to make a comic book movie, so to speak, unlike anything we'd ever seen, and they succeeded.
Martin Scorsese himself, he says that, the Marvel movies they're not movies.
They're not cinema.
They're amusement parks, which kind of sounds like a little bit like Howard Beale back in network, to go back to network, television isn't truth, television is an amusement park.
I understand his frustration, especially considering his latest film.
Well, he's like, nobody
is going direct to Netflix.
Yeah.
My question is, why can't we have both?
Well, the audience decides, and audience.
And you're right, that is on the audience because it used to be there's no room for mid-level budgets anymore. Everything is either indie and it goes on like the awards circuit, or it's a big giant superhero spectacle, and there's not much room in between.
Picked a heck of a time to get into movie making, let me tell you.
Yeah. So I understand his frustration, but at the same time, you know, I think he's really... By saying that, he's showing that he's out of touch.
He's not informed.
He's not informed because to say that... Did you watch Winter Soldier?
I don't think he did. I think maybe he watched Iron Man 3 and was like, all right, I'm out.
That's what I mean. Or he is correct if we're talking the superhero movies of the late 90s and early 2000s. Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
I'm just really excited at the possibility we may get more Mr. Freeze ice puns. That would
if that's the best takeaway,
from that movie.
From Joker.
But Todd Phillips, I think it was Todd Phillips or somebody that worked on the movie, said that the plan was they weren't going to make a superhero movie, but they were going to make a movie and disguise it in that genre.
Which has kind of been done. I mean, Logan did the same thing as a Western. As I mentioned, Winter Soldier is secretly a 70s spy thriller.
Yeah. Which I don't know how I felt when they said that, because I felt like they were still kind of putting their nose up at comic book films.
Without embracing this is...
Yeah. But I felt like in a lot of ways the movie embraced its... Even if it wasn't based on like a comic story, like it embraced the universe.
It did, just with that darker tone.
Yeah. And, and I think if they hadn't had the Wayne connections or anything, I think that I appreciated it for that. So it did feel like people that appreciated the comic book universe worked on it, even though they kind of claimed they did. Well, this is a real movie.
I'll say this: if we're getting a Joker movie and a Mr. Freeze movie and a Two-Face movie, we better get a Condiment King movie.
Condiment. I remember him from the animated series.
I know.
Yeah.
I will not rest until we get a movie about Condiment.
Was he
King.
from the animated series?
No, I think he was. He's from a comic, but he was specifically made up as a joke.
Okay.
Like it was always a gimmick.
Yeah.
He was never meant to be serious.
As always is. Yeah. Do you think they could have released Joker if it wasn't called Joker? If it wasn't connected to DC? Because you bring up a good point. Like, comic book movies sell, and I don't know that this would have nearly gotten the attention it did if it
probably not.
Yeah.
If you had just called it
Arthur
Fleck.
That's a different, maybe Fleck.
Yeah.
Right.
And just call it New York City and take out the Wayne stuff.
Take out the Wayne stuff or give them different names, No,
I don't think it would have done as well. I think it would have just been like, oh, here's this cool, creepy movie that kind of flies under the radar.
I mean, it'd probably be like an indie, like a festival hit.
But it would not get the attention or the controversy.
Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about that, because I love comic book movies, but it kind of stinks that something has to be a comic book movie to be kind of taken seriously in the market.
It's what the audiences want.
Get the people what they want.
Look at, as much as, me, I'm a huge horror fan. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, they're saying it's going to be the first MCU horror movie.
Yeah.
But does horror have a place in a comic book movie?
Yeah, but I'm saying...
What I'm saying is if you just had that movie about a guy going through a multiverse of madness, would it do as well? Probably no. It's Doctor Strange.
Well, and everything has to be connected to a franchise now, which is tough. I mean, it's tough for...
Plus, I'll say, to Scorsese's credit, Doctorverse and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, if that doesn't sound like a theme park ride, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
Maybe he made that comment after he heard that movie's title. See, they're all theme park rides.
He just heard that and he's like, that's it. I'm talking to the media. I have to. He does kind of sound like Clint Eastwood, get off my lawn. Kind of.
Well,
look, I respect him. He's one of the greatest directors that ever lived, but he sounded a little bit curmudgeonly. But I guess you have the right to do that when you've had his career. But anyway, that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
No, I mean it was beautifully brutal and sadistic and chilling all at the same time. I don't know how else to...
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll have another experience watching a movie for the first time in a theater like that for a long time.
I would agree. I mean, it was an experience, and yeah, what can you say? Well, thank you all for joining us at Affiliate Film Brothers. Visit us at dorkdaily.com. Please subscribe. Hit the bell at the bottom to be notified for future podcasts and other videos. And we'll see you next time. Hang on. I gotta make him go away. He's...
What?
He's so loud. Percy!
Is that picking it up?
I don't know. Percy, go wander off a bit.
Oh, he listened.
All right. Thanks, Percy.
That's some cat wrangling for you.
Okay.